Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast.
Hello and welcome to Turning the Wheel. This is a show about astrology, as you know. My name is Chris Flisher, and my guest today is going to be a wonderful, fascinating person who I've been trying to get a hold of for quite some time. But before we start our show and our topic, which is going to be transit of Pluto, very ominous and dire topic, I know. I want to remind you about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon at about 1:30. In there, you'll find 2 or 3 paragraphs of mundane astrology talking about how the planets affect all of us, and then I break it out in individual signs. I encourage you all to read your sun sign and your rising sign each week and get familiar with that. Smash those two together, you'll get a good idea what's coming down the week, the theme of the week to come. Not the specificity, but the theme of what's to come in your week. So, that's a quick reminder, www.turningthewheel.com, turningthewheel.tv. My guest today is one and only Alan Oken. And the reason it's taken me so long to get to him was I knew that he was 12,000 miles away. But now modern technology makes this all happen. And he is here joining me today. It's 9 o'clock in the evening for me. It's 10 o'clock in the morning for him. But we're here. Alan Oken is here. AlanOken.com is his website, ALANOKEN.com. And we're going to be talking about the transit of Pluto. So, Alan, welcome to Turning of the Wheel. I'm so happy you finally get you on the show.
Well, thank you, and good morning from Bali, Indonesia.
Yeah, what a great place. I'm sure it's nice and balmy there. It's not that here.
No, it's beautiful. It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. So you as an astrologer and I as an astrologer, we've been looking at Pluto for quite some time, as we all have. And we know that it's coming up to a critical point in the history of the United States as well as others. And I'm curious what your long view of this is. Is this a good thing? Is this a necessary thing? What's your take?
Well, I don't find destruction and death to be bad. It's just how death occurs, why it occurs, and what the modality of destruction is. I'm about to do a webinar on hoarding. Oh. I don't expect too many hoarders to take the webinar because hoarders hoard money, so I don't think they'll want to pay for it. But I do feel that a lot of people hoard, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, or all three. And so Pluto in Capricorn can, with certain aspects, break the structures of that hoarding on any of those levels, or reinforce it. So you have to look at the principle of death and resurrection, but you can resurrect that which has already died into the same form. And if you keep resurrecting something inferior into another incarnation in the same form, the quality of energy within that form will decrease. So the habit patterns will get deeper and deeper, and the rewards for those habit patterns will be fewer and fewer, so that eventually you'll really kill yourself.
So you're perpetuating a bad habit, and if you don't correct it, you sink deeper into the mud.
There's no doubt about it. And whether that is, hoarding used plastic bags, hoarding used lovers, hoarding used creative ideas, or bad feelings towards one's mama, I mean, whatever it is that one is not regenerating, that one is not circulating, that's going to create a dark hole in your being that will, the quality of magnetism of which will increase with the more energy you give to that particular area. So eventually you have a black hole in your life that's just sucking, and your ability to use your will, because Pluto is a first-ray planet and has very much to do with the use of will. So then your use of will is circumvented into the will of the habit itself, and then you are addicted. You have a lot of problems.
Then you can't break out of that cycle. You're stuck in the cycle. So what Pluto does...
Until you reach, as they would say in AA, until you reach a bottom. Mm-hmm. And then either you break through or you literally die. I mean, it's simple as that.
It's a black and white decision.
Yeah, at a certain point, Pluto creates, if you'll excuse the expression, shit or get off the pot.
Right.
Or, to be more polite, transmute or die.
Mm-hmm. So this is what's important for people to take away. This is a moment in time where we are being pushed to reinvent, tear down something that no longer works in our lives, and rebuild it in a way that's better. If we do not heed that call, then therefore we are then dragged down into the mire with it.
Absolutely, and that is reinforced by Saturn's passage in Capricorn.
Yeah, no shit. That's perfect, right.
So during the years of Saturn's passage in Capricorn, 2.5 years, beginning now, the Christmas of 2017, for the next 2.5 years or so, Saturn will be joining Pluto, culminating at around 22, 23, 24 degrees of Capricorn in 2020. So that dual dynamic of Saturn and Pluto. Well, with Pluto, Jupiter will be going there too. Yes, but with Saturn and Pluto both being in Capricorn, an individual has the opportunity to destroy and build certain structures that can be incredibly beneficial. The destructive death process can be very beneficial. The reconstructive, rebuilding, restructuring process can be very beneficial. The worst thing that happens is that people become complacent and they don't work on their homework. They don't do what they have to do. They become so magnetized and entrapped by their astral nature, by their emotional nature, by what is called in the ancient wisdom teachings, the kama manas, the link between the rational mind and the emotion, the desire nature and the thought process. They become so entrapped in this mind emotional habit pattern dynamic that they don't move and their feet become stuck. And that is very, very dangerous. And that happens to people, especially after the age when metabolism is on its own track. You know, after, let's say, in your 30s and beyond, and metabolism begins to slow down. So you don't have the natural impulse of nature moving your body and your body through certain dynamics. Now you have to fuel your own engine. And the older you get, the more refined that fuel has to be, and the more specific the repair job has to be.
Yeah, I see this sort of as a come to Jesus moment, and I don't mean that in the way that it is, or I'm not, nor do I profess to be a Christian in that regard. But what I'm saying is that it is a real aha moment in people's lives, where if they find the location of this situation in their lives, they can either step into it willingly, and we all know that life deals us many bad cards sometimes, but how we accept those cards and what we do with them is critical as to how the outcome is. So if we dive in and accept them as they are and elicit change in a positive manner, we can become very enlightened as a result. This is a real time of rebirth in some ways, I think.
I totally agree with you, Chris. Totally agree with you. And it's just that people fall into lassitude. They fall into laziness, you know. And then what happens is, you know, the Roman Empire is alive and well. I mean, in Rome,
never left.
Right. In Rome, they used to give the plebeians the Colosseum, and the patricians, the rulers, would pay for people to go and watch these gladiatorial and these other horrible events. And nowadays, they give people legal marijuana. Now they give people shopping malls. Now they give people any left, right. They bribe people left and right so that people stay in lassitude, so that they stay, without becoming socially active, and that's very harmful.
So this is a clear. This is where Uranus comes in some ways, because what Uranus has done is has brought this new invention into our lives, in which we deal with every day, which has distracted people from this lassitude that you're talking about. So we get pulled, not we, but collective we, the universal we get pulled into this swirl of distraction, information, this constant churn of BS coming through our lives, this steady stream, and that distracts us to the point where we don't focus on these larger topics. So what the value of what we're talking about here, for those of you who are listening, is to understand that if you can step aside from that daily chatter, if you can find out where this is actually happening in your life and focus on that, you can actually come out of this whole mess as a much wiser, deeper, better person, I would think, don't you?
I do. George Orwell stated it pretty well. I mean, in 1984, he very much reflected a number of situations that are occurring in this early part of the 21st century. So this Big Brother and these screens everywhere, everybody doing the zombie walk. Do you know what they're doing in Singapore these days? It's fascinating. You find here in Bali too. I mean, everywhere, millennials and younger and even older people walking around with their cell phones, their so-called smartphones in their face, and they do what I call, or is called, the zombie walk. I mean, they just walk through the streets, not looking at anything around them, into their phone.
Yeah, right.
Other than their screen. And so what Singapore is doing is they're putting street lights on sidewalks, in the sidewalk, so that when you're looking down, you can see if it's red or green, because a lot of people have been killed or injured in traffic accidents because of the zombie walk.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I believe it, though. I mean, I am not of that generation. I don't have that addiction yet. But I can see it easily happening. But I think that is a valid point here, because what Pluto is actually saying to us and illustrating to us and bringing to our table is this opportunity to reinvent ourselves in the most phenomenal way. And I think this is the difference between greatness and just ho-hum. This is what makes somebody great or just blah. If you can step into the house, the realm in your life that is Pluto's occupying right now, you can reconstruct that in a way that is maybe somewhat painful and discourteous at the time, yet very valuable at the other end. And if you ignore that, you've missed an opportunity. You've missed the train.
I think that's true, and I want to emphasize the need for group work, because it's very important to be part of a group of men and women who are of like minds and who are joining together for social service purposes, or who believe in certain causes that you believe in, so that you're not left entirely to your own devices to do something. What you're left entirely in your own devices to do is to find your group, and then to participate and to define what your particular focus of participation is in a collective event. We are on the cusp of the age of Aquarius. It is very important that each of us find our place. Saturn, after it moves through Capricorn, will go into Aquarius. So what you have structured during Saturn's passage in Capricorn, once you have built the necessary sense of personal authority, it will be when Saturn moves into Aquarius Aquarius incumbent to donate that to a group, a sociological structure, you would say.
Yeah, I see that. I see this as a time, the next 2 to 3 years, as a time where we really focus on shoring up our foundations. And then when Saturn does ingress into Aquarius, we will then be able to act on it. I love the idea of the tribe. I feel very strongly in the tribal mentality, meaning that you surround yourselves with either a literal family or a virtual family or some sort of family that allows you to, like you say, like-minded people. I'm totally in step with you there, where we have like-minded people who are mutually supportive and mutually beneficial. You can't do that today. I will do that for you. You take care of me tomorrow. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. That whole idea, I think, is really very much a part of what I, as a 65-year-old guy, tried to do in the 1960s. I thought we were onto something back then, saying, this is how we live. I lived in a commune. I lived in a very tribal community. And I thought this was the way to go. Somehow we just got sidetracked. But yet, here we are with Pluto in Capricorn squaring Uranus at some point in time. And this whole, as it has many times over the last several years, thing comes to fruition. It's the square that drives it seems like.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, you're looking at the introduction of new archetypes into the collective consciousness with Uranus and Aries, and then you're up against prevailing power structures with Pluto in Capricorn. So the tremendous battles that were waged in the streets in 2013 to 2017, that's when the Pluto and Uranus squares were very, very exact. And then you had all this chaos in Arab Spring and Syria and all these massive public demonstrations against the established order. I mean, that continues now, of course, but Uranus will be moving into Taurus very soon, and that will increase, if you will, the need to make those ideas that Uranus quickened in the minds of women and men, ground them into some physical application. And whilst the powers that be, and I'm thinking specifically in the United States, are worship materialism and have as president a god of materialism, then the implementation of such more idealistic but nonetheless practical urges for a more equal humanity will be impossible to integrate.
Why so? Why do you think that's impossible?
Because there is a power structure in gear that will suppress with military force if people decide to act up and too much. And there's a power structure that will, as in 1984, press buttons to create wars and to create other types of social horror shows.
Distractions.
That distract from the urge to take that power structure out of power. So until that power structure is removed and Obama's reelected, I mean Michelle Obama.
Michelle, of course, right?
Yes. Michelle and Oprah are elected, then I'd vote for them, and
I would too.
Until we have a humane leadership in the United States, it will be very difficult to fully implement the orientation in our hearts, which does it for good. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep orienting ourselves. It doesn't mean that you, Chris, or I should stop writing or stop speaking, or other groups who have positive anti-plastic orientations in life should stop their social and political movements. Mm-hmm. It just means that one is up against a very horrific structure of materialism, and that has to go.
It is coming down. People are beginning to feel that. And I think that One of the interesting economic sidelines to this is that because they just voted this gigantic tax law in the United States, I think what will happen is that the money will coagulate at the top, unfortunately, and then the middle class will not have their buying power, and that will suck the air right out of the balloon, because without the middle class, you've got nothing. If you don't have people eating and going to restaurants and movies and everything else, the whole thing collapses dramatically, and that will be the sort of the grand slam. But I think that when you look at the Pluto, the Saturn, and the Jupiter together, I think of it as a really big, responsible reorganization, which will actually bring us back to our space where we actually need to be in some ways, I think.
No, I hope so. I mean, we have to do our part in the one work. And each of us, and the benefits of all this Capricorn dynamic is definition. Definition, consolidation, coordination, order. When I was a young man, I had one of my first teachers. I must have been about 26 or 27 when I met him. A gentleman named Isidore Friedman, who, bless his soul, was a Capricorn. And he became our teacher, and I was married at the time, and he became our teacher. And he kept impressing upon me process, order, structure, and form. Well, as a very vibrant 20-something Aries, I didn't like that. I didn't like order, structure, form, process. I just wanted to do. And now I find as a senior, as I call myself a Saturn senior because I'm in my Saturn years, right? Now I'm teaching my students structure, process, order, and form. And Saturn and Jupiter and Pluto, all in Capricorn, are telling people, you and me, how essential it is to implement proper ordering, proper structuring. One of the difficulties of being a flower child, and one of the difficulties in being a super liberal politically, is too much idealism and not enough practical action. Someone else will take care of that.
Yeah, I can see that. Sort of a certain detached apathy in some way.
It's I would also call it a detached empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that people in our age groups and many men and women, of no matter how old they are, have hearts that are filled with love, but they're lazy. They don't know how to do anything, or they're afraid of losing what they have by stepping out of their discomfort zones. And that is why group affiliation is so very important.
Oh, yeah.
So that you have other people with you and you're marching along together towards a collective goal whose aim is the benefit of society in one form or another.
Yeah.
And I just don't sit here in my garden in Bali and say, oh, I'm pontificating, because I'm a member of several such groups.
No, that makes perfect sense. I'm in line with that completely, because I think it's only in the power of the collective that we really gain some sort of traction. I don't think we can do this singularly. We have to do this collectively, and it's through the
Amen. It's
through the joint effort of all of us, a little bit here, a little bit there, that we actually get there. And that is a true Aquarian concept in its roughest form. Aquarius is about the collective, and I think that when we are in that mindset, and it's not about me. This is what bothers me about Facebook in some way, because it's so egocentric, it's so narcissistic in a sense. I mean, yes, you do build community, yes, you do get this, but you don't. It's all about trying to be your billboard on the highway, and that's not the way to go. We don't need a billboard on the highway with your name on it or my name on it. We need a tribe on the highway that says we are doing this collectively for the further advancement of society. I think.
And what these Aquarius Leo eclipses, because 2017,
I know.
2018,
Yeah.
what these Leo Aquarius eclipses are all about is to better create a frame of reference
Yeah.
of how the group Aquarius can be of benefit to the individual Leo, and how the Leo individual can be of benefit to the group.
Yeah, it's very true. And you know what's very interesting about that eclipse in particular, and not to put too much on this the United States, but it did slice right across the middle of the United States. I mean, that does show, if nothing else, it shows us some sort of a symbolic, metaphorical division, which is clearly evident in the United States now. But that is a representation of a larger. It's a microcosm of a macrocosm. What we saw in the eclipse is this division. The division is an international phenomenon, and we have to, the idea of the tribe really speaks to the opposite, which is where you would find your solution, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where you'd find your solution. We're speaking today with Alan Oken. His name his website is ALANOKEN.com, AlanOken.com. I encourage you to go there. He's got a fabulous website full of great information, newsletter that goes out every week, and really a good...
Every month,
sorry. A really good thing to track as far as, getting an idea of what's going on in the world with astrology. Astrology is a fascinating science. We know that it works. Those of us who are in the business, we know it works, and the secret is to convince you that it works. We know that you know it works because it does. But you've got to look at it with the right perspective. You've got to look through the right frame of mind, the right prism angle in order to understand what's going on there. But the truth is there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few minutes with Alan, and we'll continue our talk about the transit of Pluto, which is phenomenal on a number of levels, not only universally, not only globally, internationally, in the state of the United States, and where it applies to you as an individual as well. So hang in there. We'll be right back in a few seconds, and we'll pick up where we left off. Thank you.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
Hi, your host, Chris Flisher here. I've been producer and host of this podcast and radio show for the past 10 years. My goal has always been to provide enlightening, progressive, and logical discussions about where we are as a species and how we move ourselves further down the road towards our greater potential. I believe astrology provides a great tool for observing our progress and awakening our consciousness to becoming a whole, better, and more complete individuals. I have sought to invite the best contemporary guests, thought leaders, and progressive minds to discuss topics that concern us all, regardless of your beliefs. Consider making a contribution through PayPal to help keep the great wheel turning so that I can continue for the next 10 years along the same enlightened path. As always, I thank you for your support.
Hello and welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. We're talking today with Alan Oken. ALANOKEN.com is his website and his address. Remarkably rich, vibrant, colorful website with lots of information there. And I think that at the core of what we're talking about with the transit of Pluto is a basic underlying message that comes deep from within Alan's core as well. And I'm curious to you, in asking you these questions now, Alan, after our conversation, how do you, what's your background and how do you see this all evolving in a way that can serve us as a greater lesson for the future?
Thank you. I'm part of a lineage. The lineage is called the Ancient Wisdom Teachings. It's a lineage that's been carried on for millennia. And it's a living lineage. It's a lineage of wisdom. When I first started in this work, when I was 23, I'm 74 now, so that would have been 1967, I was told that astrology would lead me to my path. It didn't say, my teacher didn't say to me that astrology was my path. My teacher said to me, become an astrologer, my son, and that will lead you to your path. So in the course of becoming an astrologer, in the course of being able to shape the mind so that the mind can perceive energetically, and that the mind can perceive structures of energy as they relate one to the other, because that's, to me, the greatest benefit to the individual to study astrology, is that you develop true intuition. And true intuition can only be given when the heart is also developed, so that when love is a vehicle and the mind is a vehicle, when they fuse through a structure such as astrology, then true intuition evolves. And to me, that's the greatest benefit of studying this subject, aside from the fact that you have a tool with which you can help other people, which is kind of neat. But you also are developing within yourself a pathway to light. And it is in this development of the pathway to light that I have dedicated myself, and that I continue to dedicate myself, in terms of students and teaching and writing and whatever it happens to be. We live in very dark times. It is only when the light of the heart is awakened, and that is being activated through some creative focus of mind, stimulated, not by the solar plexus. Don't confuse emotion with love. So stimulated by love, the cohesive force that's inherent in the universe, called the mother, if you will, the inherent force called the soul, if you will, the inherent force called the Christ Krishna center. When that's alive and well, then you're capable of being healing. Being a healer, whether you're a healer through astrology or through medicine or through cooking or whatever it happens to be. So 50 years ago, I was extremely fortunate to come across a teacher and a teaching that I have followed for the rest of my life. I hope to follow until the end of my life. And that is what is called the ancient wisdom. And if you wish to study also the ancient wisdom, if that's something that appeals to anyone, you might want to look at the Alice Bailey books. You might like to look at Madame Blavatsky's books. You might like to look at the Theosophical Society. Not necessarily become a member of the Theosophical Society, but read the books that the Theosophists have written. In this stream of the Alice Bailey work, in this stream of Saradarian, in this stream of Ivanov, in this stream of Alice Bailey, within the context of the streams of these authors, you to the ancient wisdom. And if that appeals to you, then by all means follow that. And you will see that as you move on this link of that lineage, it will lead you to certain esoteric schools. I won't mention them, but it will lead you to certain esoteric schools. And if that happens to be your orientation, then I'm very happy to have had this moment with Chris so that I could plant that seed. I'm not a proselytizer, but there are many people looking for something, and the ancient wisdom is not the only thing to find. But it certainly is not. And it doesn't have all the answers. It had the answers, a lot of the answers for me, but it may not have the answers for anyone else. But if there's one or two people who are listening to this program and who are drawn towards a magnetic pull to wisdom, which in itself contains love. And if that's the calling, and you have the mind interested in such a thing, then I'm very happy to be here with you this evening, in order to plant that seed.
Do you think that this seed is a timeless seed that's been transcended down through time?
Yes, it's a timeless seed that comes through the ages, and then our job as teachers and students of this lineage is to plant that seed, and we do that through our service work, and no matter what form it takes, we do it through our service work.
And the idea of using astrology as the foundational conduit, vehicle, whatever you want, a communication path for that, allows us to tap into this in ways which we normally wouldn't have seen had we not known. So unveiling this part of our lives allows us to tap into our intuition, and therefore from that intuition we derive a great sense of purpose, ultimately.
Yes. Exactly what I mean, Chris. That's exactly what I mean. I mean, finding the sense of purpose is of finding how love specifically manifests through you. Yeah.
And that's such an overpowering idea when you think about it, because we seem to have lost so much of that in our lives lately. Like you say, this is a time of great unrest, and I do believe that unrest is a necessary catalyst for change. If we were all comfortable, we wouldn't change. So I think that the fact that we have unrest and civil disobedience and civil unrest are all actually pretty healthy signs of a species in evolution. And
a lot of that civil disobedience is obedience to a higher calling.
Right.
When we have civil disobedience about women's rights, about gay rights, about black rights, about the rights of immigrants, when we have this so-called civil disobedience, that is obedience to the higher order of human unity.
But if we're fighting against that, we are saying something's not right, right?
Yes, that's correct. I agree with you. And something is not right. One of the greatest benefits of having Trump in office is the ability for people to know in no uncertain terms there's something not right.
Right.
And to stand up for it, and to have the rise up of the Me Too movement, and the rise up of all of these wonderful things that are the rising up of people saying, I've been molested by the Catholic Church. I mean, and by the priests and within the structure of the Catholic Church. I mean, to have all of these, the power, when I was growing up and you were growing up, we had this power to the people. Well, it took 40 years or so, but it's finally happening. And the powers that be are very scared. Very scared, because there's a new social order that's developing, and it will be implemented.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, and I think that's part of what Pluto in transit does. In some ways,
absolutely,
it kicks the wedge out from behind the tire. It kicks the supporting archway down. It knocks things down to the point where they have to be reviewed and reconsidered in a new light, and that's. So, the thing about it is that as an astrologer, and I am one myself, when we approach our clients, we say to them, I think we say, this is how life happens. You sort of knock down that which doesn't work, and you rebuild in a new constructive manner. That's what I think.
And you give ways to do that.
Right.
You give resources to do that. What I find sometimes is I don't have the resources. In other words, I'll find people coming to me who need a psychologist or who need a psychotherapist. And the best I can offer them is to tell them, you need a psychologist or you need a psychotherapist. The best thing I can tell them is, here's how the structure of your horoscope is created, and here are certain challenges to personal equilibrium. And I do not have the therapeutic techniques nor the inclination of a psychotherapist. So what the best I can do for you in this moment is support support your efforts for your own healing. And if I happen to have in my Rolodex of resources people that I can recommend other people go see, I give that to them. Or books, I give that to them. I think one of the things I have learned over the years, and this is a very good Saturn and Capricorn lesson, what are my own limitations? What are my own boundaries? What are my own structures? What can I give and what can I not give? And then also, and this is what's very challenging to astrologers, when people want to take advantage of your time and energy because you have a shingle out that says astrologer helper. And then they have this, some people, not all, they have this automatic impression that you're there to be drained of your understanding without respecting the structures that you have in place.
Wow, you got me there. You got me. I'm on your side there.
So, I mean, I'll give you an example of this, and this is where intuition comes in to help, because then with your intuition, you can tune into whatever a person is saying, what are they really saying? Well, however a person presents themselves, what are they really presenting? So to be able to see that and to see that dispassionately, to see that as energy and to deal with it as energy, that's a gift. I'll give you an example. Last night I was in bed with my iPad, and very 21st century astrologer. I was in bed with my iPad, and I received a message. I teach a lot in Portugal, and Portuguese is a language that I also speak. So I received a message from some woman in Portugal, a woman who I do not know, but who knows me. So, and the message was in this very familiar Portuguese, because Latin languages have levels of familiarity.
Yep.
So she was writing to me in a very familiar language, saying that she was coming to Bali. What's the weather like there now? How do I think it is for retiring or to write for a bit? Where would I go? And then she gave me a list of all these things that are happening in her horoscope, and she sent that to me. And I perceived that the woman wanted a free reading. And I don't even know this person. So I wrote back in very formal Portuguese, saying, if you'd like to have a reading about these subjects, I'm certainly open for that. Please consult my website for the details, and I wish you well. And that was the way I was able to maintain my boundaries, because I could see that this person wanted to get in there with no door being open to her, and that why should I do that when I don't even know this person? And if she can afford a trip to Bali and stay here for a while, and if she has enough respect for me to ask my advice, then please do that through the structures I have in place. And her response was, thank you very much, dear Alan, and she sent me a heart. And I perceived that as manipulative. So, which it was.
You think it was sarcastic?
Trying to get in there.
Was it sarcastic?
Yes, it was sarcastic manipulation. It was sarcastic because I sent her back it's like you receiving a letter from someone who thinks they're your best friend and is speaking to you in very familiar language, and you don't even know them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you. What I'm saying is, and I'm coming back to Saturn and Capricorn. If you're out there, if you're open as a server, as a helper, if you don't respect your own boundaries, then you're going to be wiped out. You're going to be wiped out.
Good point. Really good point. I did the scenario you just painted to me. I've dealt with many, many times, and I typically have a sort of a knee-jerk response, as you do. I sort of say, well, here's my website, book your appointment here, blah, blah, blah. I do all that. And I often throw in a little analogy, like if you go to the dentist, you don't get your tooth pulled for free, just to sort of say, we do valuable things, and you can't discount that from our abilities. It's a difficult question, I think, and the reason it's so difficult, I think, is that people are on the cusp about astrology as a whole. 98% of the world knows their signs; they know exactly what's going on, but they won't admit it. They don't quite know how to couch it. They don't know quite how to deal with it. It's too esoteric for them, but they all know that it works. And so this is a real conundrum for us. This is a problem. I get this for sure all the time.
Well, it's taken a very long time for astrologers to establish ourselves on a par of professionals with any other profession, such as lawyer or doctor or any other professional class. And we have to create our standards. There just so happens there are a lot of astrologers who are bogus. There are a lot of astrologers who have read 4 books and then decide that they're going to be astrologers, and they put up their shingle as astrologer. There are certain astrological organizations that have tests. For example, the International Society for Astrological Research, ESAR. They have a very good test.
The NCGR does too.
NCGR, National Council of Geocosmic Research. I love that title, National Council of Geocosmic Research. I mean, they have it too. And also, I think the best astrological school, well, certainly one of the best astrological schools, is the Faculty for Astrological Science, located in London, England. And of course, they have courses online that are very reasonably priced. So if a person is autodidactic and they've been teaching themselves astrology here and there over a course of a number of years, and they need the key to astrological perfection, if you will, is synthesis, and they need the keys of synthesis, then taking a course or 2 or 3 with the Faculty of Astrological Sciences is a very good idea. Very good idea.
Synthesis is the word. Synthesis is the critical word, and it was Noel Till I spoke with years ago who brought that to my attention. It is the perfect word of what you're doing, because you're bringing in a number of different influences, attributes, characteristics, themes that all populate into this sort of this stew. And the way you present that stew is through a synthesis of information that is critical to the accuracy of the astrology. But I would also go, and I know what your frustration is, and I feel that very much myself. I find that I'm frustrated by, if I provide something as a service to the world in some capacity, I feel as if I'm doing something to help further evolution in some very minute way. But
it's a way.
It is a way. So it's one small grain of sand at a time. I'm fine with that. But what I don't, and if people are convinced by that and they continue to read me and they continue to come back to me and they can say, there is some validity. There's a track record there of continuity that says, yep, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's always seems to be right on. And if you're not too finite in or specific in your terminology, or your outcomes, you can be fine. You've got to have a broad mind. The problem I think with astrology is that it requires work. And I think many people are not inclined to the work it requires. This requires a deep soul search, and I think Pluto can bring that out of a person depending upon where it is. It can be a real time to reinvent yourself.
I agree with you totally. You know, I have avenues in which I give myself freely. For example, I do lots of postings on Facebook in which I give out astrological information. I have a newsletter every month in which I list the events of the month and what I think they're going to mean, the celestial events of the month, and also a whole list of articles that are there for people to read and to download, and I will answer certain questions. So it's not like, the astrologer locks himself in a tower and you can only get in if the key is made out of gold. I mean, there are vehicles in which the astrologer can give of his or her knowledge to other people freely, openly, and in correct circulation. But there has to be boundaries. And when you're talking about Pluto in Capricorn, and you're talking about Saturn in Capricorn, Saturn disposits Pluto. Pluto is in Saturn's sign. So Saturn, when it's in Capricorn, dominates Pluto in this particular time zone. Responsibility rules, definition rules, creating correct boundaries for your own life orientation rules, definition. And this has to be clearly indicated. Otherwise, things move into chaos.
Oh, I agree. They do move into chaos. But we're at a moment in time where the universal pendulum has swung to a place in time, as you mentioned, where we are being forced to push the pendulum back the other direction in some capacity. So we hit a low, or some people may consider it a high, whatever. We hit a point in time where we've hit a wall and we say, okay, beyond this point we cannot go well, of course, we said that years ago with George W. Bush, but we can't push this line, but then we do. And so maybe it's the awakening of the pendulum being swung so far in one direction that brings us back, and eventually it kicks back. And that, I think, is part of it. That is, to me, is the Saturn-Pluto-Jupiter conjunction in 2020, when those three planets together sort of are the big boot at the other end of the pendulum that's pushing that pendulum back the other direction. I see that in some sort of metaphor.
Well, there is a saying in the ancient wisdom that's called the ring pass not, which means that you reach a certain level of consciousness, and before you can get to the other side of that ring, you have to go through. Yeah, you have to go through Pluto's door. Mm-hmm. In other words, you have to disintegrate whatever that ring is that's creating an impediment to the next level of expression, because beyond the ring is Uranus. Mm-hmm. And Uranus says, hello, new archetype, revolutionary thinking. But in order to break that ring so that you don't move into anarchy, that you move into revolution but not anarchy, there has to be an understanding of the structures of consciousness. So that you have to move along as you break through from one level to another, understanding that there are laws, understanding that there are rules. There are laws to evolution. There are rules to evolution.
So do you think we're at a place in time where we can collectively do that?
No. No, I think that we have to do that. In other words, can we get beyond Trumpism? We have to. Can we, without all these little mini-Trumps raising their head, or their Ku Klux Klan masks, or their torches in Charlottesville, can we do that? Can we put can people just believe in Jesus, please? You know, I mean, it's so much easier. When I say Jesus, I mean the Lord of Light. You don't have to be the Lord.
You mean the small J?
Yeah, the small J. I mean, I believe in your heart, you know, believe in love. You don't have to be a Christian.
Right.
You know, just to believe in what Jesus is representing, which is Christ and Krishna, you know, is the same word.
Of course.
And so you can be a Hindu, you can be a Christian, it doesn't matter, you know, just to open yourself to the place of love. And a lot of people, their heart center is confused by their solar plexus. Mm-hmm. So they're in their solar plexus, which is related to their butt. So they're in this place of personal egocentric survival mode, mm-hmm. even if they have a lot of money. They're into this egocentric, and Trump is the prime protagonist in this. No matter how much money you have, you're still in this primary tribal mode. Is humanity ready to go through that? No. Does humanity have to go through that? Yes. Are there a lot of people that can do that? Yes. I mean, if we take a look on the world stage, for example, we have a Mr. Macron in France. He's a pretty advanced person. Yes, he has his things. Who doesn't? But he's a pretty advanced person. We have Frau Merkel in Germany. She's a very advanced person.
Justin Trudeau.
Oh, he's beautiful. And he's a very advanced person. So, and the Pope, God bless him, the Pope in Rome, he's a very advanced person. There are a lot of really advanced people who have, there are not a lot, there are a number of really advanced people who are in positions of power. You know, Prince William, he's a lovely human being, you know. There are people who are in certain positions of influence and power, and these are people who need to be in control of the world. But
they're there. But don't you think that we are at a point in time where the pendulum is going to swing?
Yes, it's going to swing. It has to. Otherwise, it will destroy our planet. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it's just very important to see who takes over the White House. Because even if they throw out Trump, this Dominican friar from the Spanish Inquisition would take his place, and Mr. Pence. So he'll be more easily manipulated by Congress, because he has less of an ego. So it depends who gets into the White House next. That is not part of the present power conundrum.
So we look at this I look at this as you do as well, from a very much of a historical astrological standpoint. We can't get too mired down in the personalities because the scenarios aren't as accurate as we think they are. So if we find
that's a good point. That's a very good point, Chris.
If we find another person that comes up out of this whole conundrum and presents themselves there, I tend to think in very large terms. I've got Jupiter in my 8th house. I'm sorry, Jupiter Mercury conjunct 8th house, Aries, both of them, and I am an optimist at my core, and I do believe that this is, I don't think that it doesn't rain without the sun doesn't happen without the rain. So the fact that we're in this mire now is a catalytic moment that pushes us as a society, as a collective group, as a species, whatever, over the line, and we never go back there again. We've got moments in history where we can see this cycle repeated. We've seen this stuff before. And so we are wise to the lessons of history, and history will bring us to a better point. This is my ultimate thing, and this is why I think that the Age of Aquarius sounds like a pat phrase, and it's sort of tied to the hair thing, but it really does bring us back to this point in time where astrologically we are about on the cusp of that. And I think 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years from now, we will be in a realm about which we are now talking, and we will have arrived there because the mechanism that started that ball is going to be in place, and the ball will have already taken off. We had to hit this bottom in order to get to the apex. I believe that's true. I think it's very cyclical in nature.
Well, I'm going to quote my late mother, bless her heart, from your words to God's ears.
Yeah, really, huh? That's great. So true. We have been talking today. Thank you, Alan, so much for talking. I appreciate your tolerance and patience to go with the flow of my conversations. I tend to be very organic and loose, and I love the fact that we were able to figure this out and get back on track. Alan Oken is a fabulous astrologer. He works out of Bali. His website is alanoken.com. Alan Oken is his website. He, like I, are people, we put out stuff in the world every day to sort of whatever. We are just, maybe we're conduits, maybe we're messengers, but I do believe that we have a certain insight, and if you're willing to listen to what is being said, I think you can glean a great deal. And depending upon how hard you are willing to work on yourselves, you can find you can find out where the secret really comes from, because it's there, it's staring you in the face, and astrology is the guide that's pointing you to that spot. Alan, what do you have to say to that?
I just wish love and blessings to everyone, and kindness to everyone, and harmlessness to everyone. There's a lot of work to be done, and may everyone be blessed in his or her path to finding their place in the one work. And I thank you very much, Chris, for having me today.
Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much. Again, Alan Oken, ALANOKEN.com. Don't be dismayed by the fact that he's in Bali. He can talk to you as well as I'm talking to him right now. He's as clear as a bell, and he's a wonderful guy, and I encourage you to touch base with him and keep in track with that. So please do that. Alan, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great talking to you. Namaste.
Pleasure.
To you, my friend.
Yes.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.